we get back thousands and thousands of testimonials from people saying, you have taken the noise out of my brain.
You are tuned into the Dr. Tina Show with Dr. Tina Moore. For more, visit drtyna.com. On this episode of the Dr. Tina Show, I think I may have found nature's Ozempic. Now, hear me out. You know I throw a lot of shade at the supplements out there claiming to be such, but I have come across something called Calocurb, and I have dug into the science, and I'm going to share it with you today. I invited on the CEO and founder of Calocurb, which is a hops-based extract. It's completely natural, and it's been shown in clinical data to increase GLP-1 naturally, endogenously, by over 600% over baseline. That's pretty phenomenal. I've tried it myself, and I have found it to work with appetite suppression extremely well. So I want to go into all the data with you. They have multiple clinical studies that they've ran. This is a New Zealand company. It may be why you haven't heard about it yet. Maybe you have. Maybe you've tried it. Maybe you haven't. If you have not heard about it, I highly encourage you to sit down and listen to this episode in its entirety. It's really fascinating information. If you want to try Calocurb for yourself, you can do so and get a discount if you head to calocurb.com. That's calocurb.com/Dr. Tina. Go ahead and use Dr. Tina at checkout and you will get 10% off your order. So without further ado, let's jump into this fascinating conversation. Sarah, welcome to the Dr. Tina Show. I'm so glad to have you here today. I have been sort of quietly stalking you and your company behind the scenes for a few years now, and I was honored to meet you recently in Las Vegas at an anti-aging conference, and I got to sit down and hear some of the science about what we're going to talk about today, and I was thoroughly impressed. And so after several months of back and forth, I finally get to have you on the show so we can nerd out a little bit and tell everybody about Calocurb. So welcome.
Thanks, Tina. It's great to be here.
Yes. I think we're going to have a good time today. So I want to tell the audience right off the bat, Calocurb is a GLP-1 stimulant, and it comes from a hops extract. I'm going to let you explain all of this. But when I first learned of you, the reason I'm sharing this is because I was getting inundated when I came out on the scene and was talking about this concept of microdosing tiny little amounts of GLP-1 and the potential actually for a functional or even literal GLP-1 deficiency, or maybe folks just having petered out L cells that were not producing any GLP-1 anymore for various reasons like leaky gut or some kind of, bowel disease. And I was inundated by people saying, is there something natural I can take? There's got to be something natural. And so, of course, the berberines and the bitters and all of those things were coming at me. And this one was something that was suggested as well, Calocurb. And I just brushed it off with all the rest. I was like, this whole nature's Ozempic thing, this is nonsense. This is not, these are supplements and herbs that might do something, but like probably nothing appreciable, or we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. I've used gads of berberine in clinical practice. I never saw anyone lose any weight from it. So all that to say, Calocurb has very much impressed me. I've used it myself. And so I wanted to have you on today because I think this is an important conversation for those who really do want to hear about something that actually is working to stimulate GLP-1 with clinical studies behind it and is natural. So anyway, that's why I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Thanks, Tina. Can I start at the beginning, I suppose?
Yes, please.
So starting at the beginning, this is what I absolutely love. So just bear with me when I take you on a bit of a story. In 2010, a group of very talented scientists in New Zealand had the hypothesis that they would find a natural plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. Now, remember, that was 15 years ago. So group of scientists, but also the government employed. All primary research in New Zealand is done by the government and supported by the government. So they had this. There was a couple of reasons why they had this hypothesis. In times of famine in the Highlands of Scotland, Scottish people chewed very, very bitter berries to suppress appetite. In Kalahari Desert, they chewed very, very bitter cactus before they went hunting. And in fact, you may remember that was sort of the origin or the genesis of Hoodia. So they had this, they knew that. They then, and there'd been some animal studies. So they applied to the government. They got a $20 million grant, and the grant was it was called Foods for Appetite Control, and they got that back, the $20 million. They did some amazing stuff. I won't take you too much through it, but they literally took biopsies right through the human gastrointestinal tract. They mapped out our bitter taste receptors. They could show where they all were. They then grew these out, and they showed that in the upper duodenum or in the upper digestive tract, when stimulated these bitter taste receptors, they expressed appetite suppressing hormones. So we all know GLP-1, but they express CCK and PYY. So they showed that they could get these to express. They then built a model, this high throughput model, and they tested 1,000 extracts. Remember, this is all government, not commercial or anything. They tested 1,000 extracts on this high throughput model. And literally only one extract worked, as in expressing enough of these appetite suppressing hormones that would actually make a difference. And that actually came from a hop. Now, it's not actually surprising it's only one. And the reason being is that if we ate anything bitter and we stopped eating, well, we just wouldn't be here. We'd have a cup of coffee and we'd stop eating. So they found this, and then they did a whole lot of other things on it. So basically, they'd found a natural herb, when taken down to the upper digestive tract, released appetite suppressing hormones, and this was great. So that was all done in vitro. Remember, this then had taken about 3 or 4 years, all done in vitro. So they then had to take it to human clinical trials. So they formulated this extract into a capsule. They put a vegetable oil with it. They did a number of things, and they took it into their first human clinical trial. And that's the one that was the eureka moment. They showed if given this capsule, which we now call Calocurb, an hour before an eat to your full lunch and an eat to your full snack, we got these big peaks in GLP-1, CCK, and PYY. Now, these were at 600% above what we call baseline. And they got an 18% reduction in calorie intake. So Long story short was they, over 5 years, they did this extraordinary work. It was all novel. We've just received our patent, a granted patent in the US and in Australia, pending New Zealand and pending Europe. So very novel work, and they showed that they could express from our little wee L cells in our gut these appetite suppressing hormones at a level that would make a behavioural difference. And the behavioural difference is an average. Now, I'm saying an average because some were higher, an average of an 18% reduction in calorie intake.
Which is significant. I mean, that doesn't sound like a huge number to some people. And to me, it sounds like a big number, but that's a significant amount when you think about, especially as women age in particular, we increase our intake of calories just a little bit each year, it seems, due to hormonal changes and et cetera. And that little bitty change has really large repercussions over time. And so an 18% reduction over a short period of time is...
It's around 200 to 210 calories. So I say it's like it's not a Big Mac, it's a Mac. And as you said, it's a Mac. So, for example, when you are on an injectable, right, a semaglutide, when you're injecting in a synthetic GLP-1, on average, you reduce your calorie intake by 24% a day. So you take Calocurb twice a day, it's 18%. To your point with women, is when you're menopause or post-menopause, a woman has to eat 200 calories less a day just to stay the same weight. Because, your metabolism's gone down, your estrogen's gone down, your hormones are, but you have to eat less calories. So I often say with Calocurb, in postmenopausal woman, we're just your helping hand.
We need all the helping hands we can get. It's no joke. I experienced it firsthand. That's one of the main reasons, actually, I was leaning on studying GLP-1 in particular, is because I felt like a switch had blown in my brain, and that's the only way I can describe it. And it probably was a decline in estrogen and other factors. But I kept through the research of GLP-1 and then its impacts on the brain. That's what got me most excited, was what's happening up there and not just in the gut. And these peptides are not just working in the gut; they're working centrally too. So, do you know if Calocurb? I don't know if you have any data on this, but just from anecdotal and what folks have been saying who've been using it, it has to be impacting. I mean, at least I guess if we're stimulating GLP-1, that GLP-1 is crossing into the brain and having an impact up there, right? I mean, that's how you get the appetite suppression in many ways. It's not just the gastro.
It is we kind of say, it goes up to your brain and tells you to, you're full. So we always say feel full faster. And what it's doing is doing that. And in fact, what it does, interesting enough, we are triggering these little L cells as they go down through the gastrointestinal tract. So it lasts for 4 to 6 hours because it's triggering these. And what it actually triggers is it triggers these vagal nerves, which then go up to the brain. I mean, what we're doing, and telling you, what we're actually doing is we're super stimulating your natural response. So I always say to people, when it's a natural response, we all have this gut-brain axis, right? When you eat a big meal, about 45 minutes later, you go, ooh, I wish I hadn't eaten so much. And what's happened is you've digested your food, it's gone into your intestinal tract, you've started firing off your GLP-1, your appetite-suppressing hormones, which is telling you you're full, which is telling you to stop eating. And of course, this is a natural response. We would pop otherwise. We'd have no feedback mechanism. So what we're doing is what Calocurb is doing, we're just super stimulating those before you eat. So if you take Calocurb an hour and a half before a main meal, we go down, we stimulate these little taste receptors, and it goes up to the brain. So when you start to eat, you just can't eat as much. I'll tell you a little story. When I first took Calocurb, that would have been when I was first showing it in 2018. I was out with a group of women, and we'd had just dinner. We had I'm New Zealand, all right? So we had a beautiful slow cooked little shoulder of lamb in front of us, and we'd all eaten. And you know how sometimes when you finish a meal and you're talking to people, you'll pick at some of the nice little crunchy bits and all the rest on something. And you just do because, your brain says, hey, that looks yummy. I looked at it and I went, I just can't eat anymore. And this was the first time, that I'd taken it. And I was just like, I'm full. I am full. I cannot. So I couldn't even, I don't know about you, but I had a habit of picking, and I'd always pick at something after a meal. And that was the first time I'd taken it. What Tina made me, what always makes me laugh was, of course, this was presented to me in 2017, and I was I had never seen something with that amount of science and such a large problem, an issue that we have in the world. But remember, 2018 was long before Wegovy and the GLP were introduced to the world. So, I was in love with it. I was just like, oh my God, I'd never seen that amount of science. But trying to talk to people about it and tell them about it, it's like, what? You're mucking with my brain? You're doing what? And so, we sold, but never the same as when Wegovy was launched. And we were then suddenly the natural, and I hate saying this, but we are the effective and affordable alternative. We are working with the body. We're super stimulating it. And, you hear a lot about, hey, this stimulates GLP-1. Everything stimulates GLP-1. It is a
Right.
natural feedback mechanism. Eat an apple and you will stimulate GLP-1. However, you have to stimulate it at above 400% to get a behavioral difference. And remember, we were 600%. So absolutely, when different things you take, say we stimulate GLP-1, they do, but everything stimulates GLP-1. You then ask the question, well, how much do you stimulate it? Oh, we do it at 65%. Well, just eat an apple because that's going to
Yeah.
do the same.
Just eating, just a bolus of food, the mechanical pressure of a bolus of food will stimulate these sometimes. It does people say, oh, just eat the carnivore diet or just do this or just take the berberine. And it's not appreciable. And that's when you told me that at the dinner, that's when I was like, I'm listening. This is for real. I was even hesitant. Our mutual friend, JJ Virgin, invited me to the dinner and I was like, I don't know. I think that stuff might be a gimmick. And I'm just being totally honest here. So I was hesitant. And then I spent time talking with you.
It is. The thing is, we often get that it's too good to be true. And it does sound like that. But remember, as we've talked about before, Calocurb is actually owned by the New Zealand government. Now, whether you trust the government or not, but it is owned by the New Zealand government, and all the science we do is with the New Zealand government, with their scientists. So, we've got to be absolute in what we say and what we do. And that's how we're supported with it. So, yeah, it is. And remember, this was long before. So, long before Wegovy was on the market. So, I love the product, obviously. But I think we talked about as well, one of the clinical studies we did was actually on women. And very little clinical studies are done on women because they're difficult. Women are difficult, not because we're difficult, but we are difficult because we have hormones. So we did this clinical study on 30 women, and I'll talk about the clinical, but 30 women, but we did placebo, low dose, and high dose. So that's 3 times. So you're actually giving 90 treatments to 30 women. And what the chief scientist had to do is actually line them up in their exact same time of their menstrual cycle on the same day of the week. So this is 3 times 90 treatments because you have to do it when the hormone levels are the same. And this was during COVID. So it literally just about drove him nuts. And I think I drove him nuts as well because, I was ringing the whole time going, have you got the results? Have you got the results? And of course, these are double blinded, anyway, a whole lot of things. But the results in women were just superb. This clinical, we were looking at hunger and craving. And what we did the last 8 hours of a 24-hour water-only fast because that's the time that you'll be able to measure hunger the most. So we gave Calocurb at 16 hours and at 20 hours and then measured hunger and craving. Well, I didn't measure it, the scientists measured it. And with women, we got 100% decrease in hunger. So at 24 hours, they were no more hungry than they were at 16 hours. And craving was the one that blew me away. We got 120% decrease in craving. So they were craving less at 24 hours. And if that wasn't enough, we gave them a rebound eating meal. So we gave them a calorie-controlled meal, and the ones on the Calocurb ate 14.5% less calories. So that was 4 hours after their last dose. So, this is all measured. It's all done in controlled environment and that. So I was so super proud of that clinical because it was done on women and we got such incredible results. We get the same on men, but we get about 80% reduction in hunger. But in women, and they think women are more receptive to GLP-1. And they think that they hypothesize it's because that we will be protecting a fetus.
Interesting.
So, your brain is more receptive to it. That is a hypothesis. They don't really know, but certainly our results show that. So, as I said, in postmenopausal or menopausal women, just for cutting those calories down is fantastic. But the other thing is, in women during their menstrual cycle, during the luteal phase, which is often called PMS, is premenstrual, people will eat on average 250 calories more a day, and some up to 600. This will make an appreciable difference if you're doing that a week, a month. And it's natural. That's what I always say to people. It's absolutely natural, because your body is saying, you might fertilize this egg, and I want you to be really ready for it. So these are what these cravings are. It's not you just going, I don't feel so well. Your body is telling you, you might fertilize this egg. So I want you to have these extra nutrients, and I want you to have the sugar. So, I just think Calocurb can be really useful, in that PMS stage as well. So, yes, I take it all the time, but you can come in and out of it.
I want to back up a second, because I want to cover a few things you said to make sure that it lands with the audience. The luteal phase of the cycle, you're absolutely right. That is when you start going for the foods, and it's usually carbohydrates that we want. And so, there's a lot to the hormones, there's a lot to your serotonin, there's a lot going on there. So that is a really valuable tool. But going back to your study, the clinical study, so the rebound meal was a calorie controlled meal. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So we could measure.
And then prior, you said 18% reduction in other studies, but that was an ad libitum study, meaning they were able to eat as much as they wanted, right? That was an unlimited amount of food, and they still had an 18% reduction. So that's big.
And that was an hour. So that was an hour after they'd taken Calocurb. So I'm really firing everything. The appetite, the hunger and craving one was 4 hours. So what that showed us, that it lasts for 4 to 6 hours. And what it does is, it's a very potent, it's natural, it's 100% natural. That's why everyone goes, really? But it does, and it goes down through the intestinal tract. And because it's only focused on the intestinal tract, as it moves down, first of all, it triggers the release of CCK. Now, CCK, cholecystokinin, is a very potent appetite suppressing, but very short-lived, and in your upper gut, right? So it fires off that, then it moves down and it fires off GLP-1, and that's the one we all know. And then right down further, it does PYY. So as this amarosate, we call it, but as an extract of hops, moves down the gastrointestinal tract, it's firing these little L cells, or these bitter taste receptors as it goes down. So I always kind of think of it like this little bolus going down. And the other great thing about it is 99% of it is focused on the gut. Less than 1% is absorbed into your bloodstream. So it doesn't affect. So what we are doing is we are triggering your natural hormones. We're not doing anything in your blood, so we don't affect the liver or the kidney. So, that's really important, because people take other drugs, and most drugs are metabolized through the liver, some through the kidney. So we don't affect that at all. We literally focus on the gastrointestinal tract.
But the GLP-1, that it stimulates your L cells to produce, and the other appetite hormones, those do go out into circulation. And that's the good part. This is the part that I want to be clear about, is because that GLP-1 is now going out throughout your body and doing what GLP-1 does throughout the body, which is all the things I talk about. And that's important.
600%, which is twice the postprandial, or twice what you would produce in a meal. So I kind of describe it as we're super stimulating them. We're kind of exercising the little L cells, and we're super stimulating. So we don't put anything in your blood. We are super stimulating your natural release. So when you're on an injectable, you inject yourself with a synthetic hormone. Now, nothing wrong with that, but you are injecting yourself with a synthetic hormone. Whenever you inject yourself with a synthetic hormone, you depress your natural hormones. So, I kind of say, they're like, well, I don't need to do anything because you're already giving me it. It's like with testosterone or anything. You're giving me a hormone. I don't need to do anything. I'm off to the beach. So your endogenous goes down to zero. So, I say to people when they come off these injectable, it's not what I say to practitioners. It's not an if, it's a must that you have Calocurb, because you must kickstart this gut-brain axis again, because they've gone to the beach. They're on holiday. I think I sent you that clinical work.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that study. That was a 2020 study, the effect of glucagon-like peptide-1 analog liraglutide versus placebo treatment in circulating proglucagon-derived peptides, that on and on. I will link it in the show notes for everyone. But the bottom line is that it showed suppression of natural GLP-1 production, which that was the other thing that really blew me away. I was not sure.
No one talks about it.
And I dug and dug and dug, because I've been asked that question multiple times online, and I've dug and dug, and I could not find and I'm good at digging, and I could not find the information. And then you sent me that study, and I thought, oh my God, this is even more reason, if folks are microdosing, my whole argument with GLP-1s is stay at the lowest dose possible. Like, keep your dose as low as humanly possible. That's still effective, because this ramping up GLP-1 thing into these crazy high doses, I think is going to shoot people in the foot at the end of the day.
Well, you were just going into what I call longer term yo-yo dieting, because when you come off, you have suppressed your natural GLP-1, right, and everything else, right, right down to zero. And of course, your hunger's going to go. I think this is part of the reason for the rebound eating, is you go down to this. So, it's interesting you said, Doug, we did exactly the same thing. We had a hypothesis, of course, when you have an external hormone, you'll suppress. We couldn't find it. And I think I said to you, this fabulous gastroenterologist came up to me and said, oh, I've got the study. I've got it. And we're like, where? Give it to me. And it's so hard, because they don't want you to find it. No one talks about your natural GLP-1 down to zero. And everything I read, they're like, well, no, you just have to stay on these for life. It's a chronic disease. Now, look, in some cases it may be, but I'd say in 90% of cases, people do, reach their goal weight. They do reach where they want to be, and they want to come off the drugs. So what are they going to do then? And you need to kickstart this gut-brain axis. And the other thing we talked about, and hopefully, Tina, in 6 months' time, we're doing our 4th human clinical now, which is the largest, 150 people, men and women, BMI between 25 and 35 over 6 months. And we're measuring a number of biomarkers, but the key one is weight and body composition. And I'm really excited. This finishes in about July. And we then, goes to the statisticians. It's unblinded. We won't see anything till October. But what the scientists believe, and that's what I'm the most excited about, is that we actually upregulate these L cells, not downregulate. So that means we're actually making them produce more. And I kind of describe it as these little L cells. I'm exercising them like a muscle. Now, any gastroenterologist would just die at my description, but, I'm exercising them. So the scientists believe that we're actually creating a better gut-brain axis. So they've taken the levels before they started on the Calocurb. It's double blind. We've got a placebo, and then they're taking it afterwards. So I'm really excited about that, because we can then show we're not only stimulating the endogenous level, we're also improving your gut-brain axis. And, I've been on, of course, I've been on Calocurb for, a long time. I take it because it's my little helper, I say. I know that I no longer, I just get full faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about people say, oh, your stomach shrunk. It's not anything about that. Your stomach doesn't shrink. Your stomach doesn't go from big to small.
No.
It's about these feedback mechanisms you
Yep.
have. So, yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really exciting because that was actually the premise of my hypothesis in this microdosing, because I never set out to use microdosing as a weight loss strategy. I thought of it as my world as a naturopathic physician, we treat the gut first, and everybody's gut's compromised. Everybody has leaky gut. Everybody has inflammatory gut or irritable bowel disease or whatever. Everyone's got gut issues. And my thinking when I really understood the L cell function and physiology was, oh my gosh, these people's L cells are probably petered out. Like I'm betting
Absolutely.
that's why I say a functional deficiency, meaning the body has functionally petered out the production of whatever it is we're
Yes.
talking about. And I think that that's happening. And then when you look at the study you shared with me, that 2020 study, that showed a 58% reduction in GLP-1 secretion and a 20% reduction in GLP-2, which I did not know existed. And
Absolutely.
that's sizable. And this is an older generation GLP-1 agonist, you guys. Like this is one
I
of the
know,
older
and they're
ones.
a glutide.
Yeah. So it's one of the OG ones. So I just wonder what the newer ones are doing. And again, more reason to stay on the lowest dose possible. And then the real question is, as a root cause physician, how do we get the L cells back online? And this, I think this is it. Like, I think this is one of the solutions of potentially tonifying and helping those L cells. It's not a prevention, treatment, or cure. It's like we're physiologically trying to stoke the body back into homeostasis. And that's how I look at all of medicine. And we're not slamming them. And I think GLP-1s at higher doses just slam people. And then they're on them for an appreciable amount of time. And then they want to come down. I've had many people, Sarah, ask me, I've been on whatever for 2 years. I lost all this weight. I want to do a microdose. What do I do? And I'm like, I have no idea. Good luck.
And there isn't. And this is what I say. And I read everything. And I literally, and they're saying there isn't anything. They are saying you've got to stay on it for life. I do not. And to your point, it's about getting that body back and getting that gut brain. We are all hormonally driven. I want to say to people as well, there's been what I do like about these injectables is they have educated people on the physiology of weight management and this whole thing with that. And many people have been like, I lack willpower. The stigma, the absolute stigma and dogma about it is you have no willpower and you eat less. What most people don't realize is hunger is driven from your hindbrain. It's your hypothalamus. Oh, they've done some extraordinary scientific things on that. But it's your hindbrain. And this was an asset for us during evolution, because if you reduce your calories by 25% per day, your hunger doubles over 4 months. And this was an asset for us because it made us get out of our caves. It was like, otherwise we'd be in our caves going, hey, you know what? It's a bit cold. I'm not going out there. No, look, there's a big hairy mammoth that could kill me. No way. I'm just going to lie here. So your hunger drives you, and it thinks you're going into a famine, right? So this is what it does. So what was an asset to us in evolution is now a liability. And you have this willpower. I always do this. Here's your hindbrain, right? Your hypothalamus. Here's your forebrain. And you go, I don't need to eat that. I'm strong. I can do this. And what happens? You put hormones on that. You put lack of sleep. You put tiredness. You put anything onto that. Stress is a huge one. Your forebrain falls off and your little hindbrain goes, woohoo, we're off. I always say to people, how often have you eaten hot chips late at night after alcohol? Now, maybe you're really good and you haven't, but I know how many times I've done it. And that's my little hindbrain going, whoa, you can do this. So we have to help ourselves out and we have to get away. I hate myself. I've got low willpower. I fought with food my whole life. I went on my first diet when I was 10 years old. And, I have had this love-hate relationship with food. And I would guarantee there's so many women and men out there that have this relationship. You love it, but you hate yourself. I love it, but I hate myself because I've eaten and I shouldn't have eaten all of that and I've got no control. And just understand this is physiology. Just understand this is your body. This was evolution. So help yourself up. It is not your fault a diet fails. It is your fault, if you eat the wrong things. But give yourself a break.
And to bring it back to the scientific explanation beyond that, you mentioned that Calocurb has an impact on the vagal stimulation. The vagus nerve runs from your gut to your brain. And when you are hyperglycemic or you're in a high glucose state due to type 2 diabetes or the fact that 94% of US adults have metabolic dysfunction, it starts to literally eat away at your vagus nerve. So you get a pathologic vagus nerve. That's where some of this gastroparesis comes in the GLP-1 world, is because that vagus nerve is already compromised, and then they're put on high doses of the GLP-1, and that's how it goes. But the other thing is what you just said. When you reduce your calories, especially if you have weight loss with it, I actually was just talking about this on another podcast episode I did, there is an appreciable rebound of your metabolism slowing way down, right?
Ooh.
This is the metabolic adaptation that happens because a smaller body requires less calories. So you've dieted yourself down, or you've GLP-1'd yourself down, or however you got down there, doesn't matter. You got down there, and now your metabolism has legitimately slowed. And if you've done it quickly and abruptly, your metabolism has slowed significantly more than would be expected. That's metabolic adaptation. And your leptin has now decreased because your leptin comes from your fat, and your leptin signals to the brain that you are full.
That's it.
And so you have less fat, so you have less signaling. These people are screwed. They are in a terrible place, and the rates of success of keeping weight off are so abysmally small. They are, at best case scenario, about 10% from what I understand from the literature. If you've had appreciable weight loss, best case, maybe 5. It's right up there with rehab. Rehab has like a 2 to 5% success rate. So does weight loss. I've seen it firsthand. But the other thing to note, going back to that vagus nerve, because I know I'm going down a trail here, GLP-1 is required for leptin signaling to happen appropriately on the vagus nerve. So we need GLP-1 in the system for the leptin we do have to work. So the whole thing is an orchestra, is what I'm getting at. And then when people say,
you want to work with the orchestra.
Yes.
You don't want to, you're 100% right. We're working with the orchestra, which is what I love. We are super stimulating. We're exercising these little L cells, which, as you said, have been, in so many cases, we have dumbed down, just in the food we take and the different drugs we've are on. We treat everything pharmacologically. So you want to bring it back into harmony. We get back thousands and thousands of testimonials from people saying, you have taken the noise out of my brain. And that's so, go back to it, how practitioners are using Calocurb. They're using it, as we talked about, as an alternative. If people can't take the side effects. Now, remember, these side effects are pretty drastic. We're talking 68% gastrointestinal, so nausea, vomiting, and so on like that. This is with the injectables. They can't afford them, or they don't want to inject themselves. The second one is they're using it while taking GLP-1 injectables. So they're doing the lowest dose with the GLP-1, and they're taking Calocurb at the same time. So you've got an exogenous, but you've got an endogenous release. And then the third one is as you titrate off. And we've talked about it. You just it's a must for that, because you have to kickstart that gut-brain axis.
Yes, absolutely. Titrating off is the key, and then getting your L cells back online working is the double play there, because I'm very concerned after reading the paper you sent me. I know we talked about it, and I finally sat down. I printed it off, and I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm very concerned now. And There's parts of me, my message has been hijacked. I'm just going to have a little rant here for a second. My message has been hijacked. I came out saying use these tiny little amounts of GLP-1, try to stay below the starting dose. I'm talking about using them for maybe PCOS, cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Now, adjunctively, these are not prevention, treatment, or cure. I've never said that. We're using them adjunctively as a tool in the toolbox. Healing metabolism, all different varieties. And people took my message and ran with it. And now the whole world is saying, well, Dr. Tina says it's safe. And so they have bastardized my message. And now, just yesterday, somebody sent me a message of another gal on Instagram giving specific dosing, calling it microdosing, and it was not. It's the standard dose, which I think is way too high for a lot of people. Some people need the standard dose. And I was so frustrated. I wrote this gal and I said, you are misleading people. This is incorrect. Have you ever taken my course? Have you ever listened? Like, are you listening to what I'm saying? You're not conveying this message accurately. And this is one of hundreds of people doing this out there. And so now my concern is, did I open Pandora's box? Are people on GLP-1s now at high doses thinking they're microdosing because their doctor or their pharmacist told them they are, which is a lie. And now they're going to be having potentially, because some of them write me and say, I'm microdosing. My doctor said it was a microdose and I've been on the couch vomiting for a week. And I'm like, honey, that's not a microdose. That's not a microdose. And I always ask, what's your dose? They tell me. And I'm like, that's just a standard dose. And in some cases, Sarah, it's like pretty high up on the tiers.
I know.
Two or three doses up saying they're microdosing. And so then to read this paper and think, oh my gosh, how much are these people turning down their natural GLP-1 production?
You're totally down-regulating all of your natural. So,
what a mess.
We couldn't find this, and people don't want you to find those papers. And that was really interesting. So, yeah, of course, you're not microdosing. Take it at a very, very low and do or just take. I mean, I
try the Calocurb. Try the Calocurb instead.
I've been, obviously I'm the founder, but I've been on it for 6 years. I probably take my Calocurb once a day, and because I intermittent fast. It's just what I do, whether it's right or wrong. I'm just lazy, so I just take it in the morning because it means I can get right through. I'm happy till lunchtime. And that's just easy for me. I also take it in the evening, which I always do, if I'm going to eat late. So I'm going out to dinner and I don't want to get to dinner and eat all of the hors d'oeuvres or something like that. I just want to, I kind of pace mine, but I literally, it changed my life. I say now I'm at peace with food. I'm good. I'm happy and I feel good, and I no longer have that love-hate relationship. Absolutely. And so, they used to say gin was mummy's little helper. I say Calocurb is my little helper.
I love that. No, I think it's a great tool. I think it's a powerful, I've used it. I think it's a great tool. I tried it out months ago, before I even planned this podcast, just to make sure I wasn't, blowing hot steam up anyone's rear end. But I found it to be effective. I think the coolest part, if people are listening to me talking about microdosing GLP-1s and they are using them, I get messages all the time from people saying, it didn't work. It didn't work. I'm trying it. It didn't work. And I say, what are you trying it for? And they say, I'm trying to lose weight. I've never said it was a weight loss strategy ever. I never claimed that. And then I probe, and usually what they tell me is, well, it's work. I'm like, okay, well, what else are you using it for? And they say, oh, for my autoimmune or for my pain. It has GLP-1 has appreciable pain impacts. And they'll say it's working for that, but I'm still hungry. And I'm like, so you either have to dose yourself into appetite suppression, which isn't fun because sometimes, which is where the side effects start coming in, or you could consider something like this. Like, I didn't know this tool was there, until more recently, but something like this adjunctively, like you said, along with, so maybe they're wanting to use a smaller dose for some other reason. It's working for that reason. However, they would like to also have some appetite suppression, and maybe, consequently from that appetite suppression. I know you guys are in clinical studies on weight loss, and that those results haven't come out yet, but potentially the outcome of lower caloric intake is going to be, weight loss. So
we've had thousands, we do it. We've had thousands of testimonials, but we can't claim anything unless it's scientifically proven.
Right.
So, that's why we're doing it. But interesting enough, we just did a 50-patient in-clinic trial in the US in Pennsylvania, and had amazing with this in conjunction. So lowest dose, and probably with your point would even go lowest dose, and using Calocurb at the same time. And of course, when you come off the lowest dose, you just carry on with the Calocurb.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that whole, what I would call a natural safety. And you don't, when you inject yourself, right, there's nothing wrong with it, but your levels are high for 7 days. You don't need high GLP-1 when you're asleep. You don't need it when you're asleep.
Yes, and it's uncomfortable when you're asleep, actually. That's the worst time. If I ever had side effects from microdosing, it was when I was laying down at night. That's not when you want your gut stalled.
You've got stasis, you've got gastroparesis, right? So you're going to get constipated. There's just a whole lot of things happening. And I do feel, they literally, it was released for diabetes control, which is great. And then they noticed, a lot of the people were losing weight. So Ozempic and Wegovy, as you know, are twins. It's just Wegovy is at a much higher level because you have to take it at a lot higher level to get this appetite suppression. And, as I said to you, your brain, your body does not want to suppress your appetite because it thinks you're going into a famine. So you have to do it at a high level. So, just work with your body. That's what I kind of equate it to the first oral contraceptives, back in the 60s when they were extraordinarily high doses. Yes, they stopped, they stopped people getting pregnant, but they did a lot of damage as well until they worked with them to get the right doses and so on like that. And that was, that's taken 60 years.
Yes, I think the magic is in the dose. I think those peptides are miraculous, but I think they are potential. That's why I have a course called GLP-1's Done Right. Because I don't think everyone's doing it right. And that's my strong opinion. I do want to ask you some questions, though, because I am familiar with hops. And so these came up for me. And I actually found that you guys had addressed them in some literature you sent me. So I'm going to ask them so the audience listening. Interestingly about hops, many herbs are not necessarily direct stimulants of hormones. They're tonifying. They can tonify the system. So we use certain herbs in herbal medicine because I'm trained formally in herbal medicine, and we use them to hopefully stoke the hormones to function. Hops is often can be stimulatory to estrogen. And so we actually give hops, and one of the old school, I know this probably sounds crazy to some people, but one of the best ways that I was taught, and I'm not giving any medical advice here, this is just for educational purposes, but I was taught by my mentor, when you have a breastfeeding mother, give her a little bit of beer, the hoppier the better. You give them you give her a little IPA, it'll calm her down because the hops are calming, right? But also the beer, it's not so much for the alcohol, it's for the hops. And so I've actually found alcohol-free beer now that they have that's IPA that's very hoppy, and it's very pro-estrogenic. And so does this impact estrogen?
No, what we do is when we say it's a hop extract is, so we take the hops and we extract it with supercritical extraction. So CO2, natural, but CO2 supercritical extraction. So we take out all organic matter. So you're only left with the alpha and beta acids and a very, very small amount of essential acids. So no phytoestrogens whatsoever. It's interesting to say that I went down to see the hops being harvested about 3 weeks ago, and it's the most extraordinary. They're beautiful, but this hoppy smell is amazing. But no, there is no phytoestrogens. It is literally just the extract.
Okay, good. And then the other question, piggybacking on that, is would it cause that sedation effect that hops is known for? Okay, good.
No, it's
good to
literally, as I said, it's the alpha and beta acids. None of the, what they call the I'm going to get it wrong, the flavonoids are taken out. and all the flavonoids. So those would be the estrogenic, the sedative. So you're literally left with the alpha and beta acids. I'm taking all the fun out of it. No fun left in my hop.
No
my
fun
hop
left.
is no fun. My hop is just, it's just, and in fact, it's not even fun. This was before I got involved with the scientist. They called the extract amarasate. Amara meaning bitter and sate meaning satiation. And of course, this is scientist. No one in the world can pronounce it. I get these weird pronunciations of it. And, it's scientist. I go, I didn't name it. The scientists did. They thought it was cool. So I'm just like, you just stay with your science, all right? Just don't try marketing.
Well, I had to ask because that was honestly one of the first things I did. I kind of, like I said, I kind of blew this idea off when I first saw it. I was like, I went on your website and I was like, it's hops. It's going to be pro-estrogenic. Because not kidding you, for those of you listening, if you're a man and you're drinking beer, you're drinking an estrogen tincture. And if you're a woman, seriously, that's what I've always said. And the men love the hoppier beer. The hoppier, the better. They love the IPAs. And I'm like, have fun with your estrogen tinctures. And the women drinking the hoppy beer, I'm like, okay, well, if you start getting breast pain and your boobs start growing, you better look at your beer intake. This is not a joke. Like, this is for real. And so it's a potent herb. I was really glad to hear that. And then I do have another question. Obviously, we got to address this. What about blood sugar levels? Is there any data on Calocurb impacting insulin or blood sugar levels?
Yeah, we show that we drop the blood sugar straight after, and we do drop that, and we also drop insulin, but we think that's because we're slowing the stomach release. But these are only done in acute studies, so we will have a lot more information after this 6 months. But yes, we do drop blood sugar.
Okay, those are all good things to know, because I'm a nerdy little science girl, and I was like, I have to ask all the questions. I want to know. Well, this is awesome. I just really think it's a powerful tool. GLP-1 is a tool. All of these are tools in a toolbox. And Absolutely. I think the more tools we have available, and like you said, I think cost is an issue with GLP-1s, especially with the compounded pharmacies. I don't know if you know what's going on in the United States. Have you been found? Yeah. So it's going to get harder to get compounded, although I understand that it'll still be available. It's just a different story now with the big pharma coming down on them. So there's that. There's people not wanting to inject themselves, like you said. There's people who just don't want to be on something for the rest of their life, because what if it works?
Though, that you are depressing your natural hormones.
Yeah,
whenever you take a synthetic hormone, you are depressing. There's action-reaction. And, and this is your body. I think the important thing that you said is trying to get this homeostasis with your body. And whenever you're doing something externally. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on. They're brilliant. They work. Understand that hunger is a physiologically driven, but try and get your body in that homeostasis.
Amen. I love it. What else? Anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to make sure that we cover?
One thing I'd say, people say, what are the contraindications? We always say, what are the contraindications? If you've got any type of inflammatory gastrointestinal, so you've got IBD, not even IBS, but IBD, Crohn's, or anything like that. No, you just don't want to put anything in your intestine that's going to be, and you don't. So any sort of inflammatory. So that's just about everything else. So you're fine with drugs, you're fine with anything. The only thing I'd say is probably take your Calocurb separate to, you just don't want to compete for L cells. You just take it, a bit separate, or an hour difference from, maybe something that is absorbed, if it's absorbed in the lower intestine. Side effects, really important. We're very upfront about the side effects, which is why we have an onboarding, which is take 1 a day for 2 days, take 2 a day for 2 days, and then get up to the dosage, which is 2 an hour before lunch, an hour before, and an hour before dinner. People say, how do I remember this? It can be an hour, it can be an hour and a half. It doesn't really matter. But if you're having a cup of coffee at 10:30 in the morning, take your Calocurb. That 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you're suddenly like, oh, I need something, well, you don't take your Calocurb. So, but it is a biologically active product. So in around 5% of people, when they first take it, they will get a laxative effect. So a softening of the stool, right? And that I always say, hey, that's a good thing because it's showing it's working.
Right.
It's good, it's working. We're very, but that's why you're on board with it. That'll go in 24 to 48 hours. And also, you might be one of the lucky people that only needs one capsule, not 2 capsules. Everyone is different.
That was me. Yeah.
Oh, you won. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to back down because everything got too loose. I was like, nope. Gotta back down on the dose.
So you actually have a really good functioning gastrointestinal tract. And that's what I say to people. That's good. I mean, I'm a 2-person, right? But a lot of people are, so just on board, follow the dosage. Honestly, does my head in. And it's particularly males. And I'm sorry, if there's male listeners, it just does my head in. They're like, I'll take 2 straight away. And it's like, why? You don't do that with a drug. We say to you, and it doesn't matter. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. It is just about your physiology, how many L cells you have.
Right. Absolutely. I know guys like to muscle through things and go hard, but it doesn't always work out so well for them.
No, absolutely. So just remember, not if you've got any sort of inflammatory gut. I wouldn't do. We focus on the gut, and just remember, follow the instructions. It is biologically, which we are releasing 3 appetite suppressing hormones. So, which is why our side effects are so much less. We are doing that, but that's what they think is just when you're injecting just GLP-1. You've got a very high dose of one hormone, which is why they're finding tirzepatide better, because it's 2 hormones. Well, we're actually doing 3. Well, we actually think we're doing 4 because we're doing GLP-2 as well.
Interesting. Yeah. It's the orchestra. Like I said, we got to have the whole orchestra playing. And that is why we have to do all the things along with it. Folks, this isn't just take your Calocurb or your GLP-1 shot and call it good. You have to be strength training and making sure that you eat enough food and enough protein macros and doing all the things that we do for our health. Everything works in conjunction and those health habits stack. And then you put these tools on top and they work so much better and it's easier.
I love your word orchestra. I absolutely love that because if you've only got the trombone playing, it's not going to make a good sound. So I love that word. And, as I said, I always say to people, if you go from 10 donuts to 8 donuts, it's going to make very little difference. It is a tool in the toolkit just to quieten that noise.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I always say if you're taking a standard dose of GLP-1s, you're just slamming the bass drum, which doesn't sound good, right? And it doesn't, it might sound cool for like a song or 2, but it's not great long term. It'll give you a headache. So, we're trying to nudge. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I want to nudge people's physiology into homeostasis. I just want to gently whisper to the right systems to work. And sometimes it's like pulling levers, it's your health is like a spider web. And so some people are just all twisted up and out of shape. And we just have to pull a little bit and get it nice and round again. And that's, that's why it's nice to use natural substances when we can.
Yeah, totally. So, as I said, Calocurb, I've got the weird accent, but it's, CALOCURB.com. Go and have a look. All the science is there. All the story is there. As I said, we're owned by the New Zealand government. Yeah.
And if you go to calocurb.com/drtyna, I believe there's a discount there for them. So I will make sure I will make sure that link is in the show notes for everybody and go ahead and take advantage of that. As a listener of our show, you guys were very generous to give that. And I think that it's worth checking out. depending on the applications of this are pretty wide and broad, and I think it's worth checking out if it resonates with you. My husband, he didn't love having to think about taking something 2 hours before, and then he just sort of gave up on GLP-1s altogether, and he was like, he wanted to go all natural. So I said, okay, that's fine. So, whatever floats your boat, but if you're one of those people who remembers to take your supplements and you're really serious about getting this to work for you, it's just a little due diligence. Set an alarm on your phone. That's what I do. I just know when I'm going to eat. I set an alarm. It's not that big.
We only say take it before a meal because that helps in your meal sizes. Like I just take mine automatically in the morning because remember I'm firing those L cells anyway. So I take it automatically in the morning so I don't have to think about food. We only do that to make it easy for people.
Smart.
Take it on an empty stomach, though. Take it on an empty stomach.
Yes, I learned that. You taught me that. I was just taking it with food. I didn't read any instructions. I don't follow them very well. I was like, oops, didn't read the bottle. I just love talking with you, Sarah, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful you came on the show today. We'll have to have you back when that study gets published. I want to hear all about it.
I know. Yeah. I'm starting to bug the scientist already. So I think I'll be put in a locked room for a while.
Well, let me know. I will make sure you guys, the links are in the show notes. It's calocurb.com/drtyna. That's DRTYNA. And you guys can find all the science. It's right there on the page. Like I said, I sort of skimped through it at first and gave it no attention. And I'm really glad that I finally met you and sat down and looked through it because this is legit and it's impressive. So thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Tina Show. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Mike Fry. Theme song is by John the Guilt. You can watch the full video version of this podcast inside the Spotify app or on YouTube. As always, you can email the podcast at podcast@drtyna.com. That's DRTYNA. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find all of my offerings on my website at drtyna.com. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. See you next time, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.